Hello there, this is D-Light Channel, Development, Empowerment and Leadership Initiative. Our vision is world transformation, one man at a time, one community at a time. And to achieve that vision, every week, we try to release a short video that we think will aid you on your journey towards living your dream. Thanks for joining me once again this week. Over the last couple of weeks, I think this will be the fourth video. We have been talking about effective business communication. That is what you need so that you will be in a position to exchange information more powerfully, more effectively in the work world, or broadly speaking in the formal setting. And if you have missed the last 4 videos, I encourage you to please go back and watch them so that this one you're about to see will make complete sense to you. And what are we talking about today? We have defined communication. We have tried to show you what is common to all types of communication. And over the last 2 videos, we focused on what is different when it comes to the verbal together with the non-verbal as one video, and then the last week's video was on what is peculiar with the written communication. Now, this week, we want to focus on the visual type of communication and what is peculiar about them. And believe me, I hope you get as excited and as informed as I was preparing for this, because many of the things I'm also sharing in this video are brand new knowledge for me. In some of my videos, you remember I've spoken about conscious competency. I have achieved some measure of conscious competency preparing for this video, and I'll show you in a bit. Now, when we talk about visual communication, I want you to be clear that contrary to what some other writers or commentators may describe or define as what is visual, I am not including things like sign language. Some will even include things like books and magazines. Those are not within the purview of my own definition. When I define visual communication, I'm speaking to the exchange of information via images, illustration, graphics, designs, whatever has to do with visual in that sense. And what are the peculiarities? Now, you need to first understand the building blocks for visual communication. And there are three broad building blocks for visual communication. The first is the elements of the visual communication that you are mixing together. And the second is the composition of those elements. How do you combine them? And the third is the resultant exchange of information that you are able to achieve, which is the communication. So in essence, I'm talking about elements, composition, and communication. Now, when you see a well-designed and communicative image, many things are in that single image that you take for granted. As an example, look at this flyer in front of you. What jumps first at you? Let me speak about the elements in some more details. We are speaking about the shapes, the sizes, the colors, the position, and the orientation. The 5 variables that I just listed, how you mix them and use them is the first block towards effective visual communication. So if you take this like ingredients in the kitchen when you want to make a soup, the next level, which is the composition level, then is how do you combine these things? And what are the elements in the composition box? You have things like contrasts. How do you contrast them? How do you repeat them? How are they aligned? How close or far are they from one another? So what I'm talking about in essence is contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity of what? Of the shapes, the sizes, the color, the position, and the orientation. And when you mix these three together, these two different boxes or blocks together, you then arrive at the third one, which has to do with what? The communication. And what are the elements of this communication I'm talking about? We are talking about hierarchy, grouping, and sequence. Ha ha ha. A lot of English I'm speaking. Let me break this down because I can't go into too much detail. If you need me to help on this, please write in and I can dwell and wallow in the details with you for better clarity. But this is what we are saying. All right? Now, number one, when you are putting together a visual communication, you need to be clear about the hierarchy. What are we saying? When people look at that image, at that visual, what is the most important thing you want them to see? Remember, if in the image I just showed you, what was the first thing you saw? I am sure that the first thing that struck you is that biggest image that you found there. Because when you look at an image, you don't necessarily take them in the order in which they are arranged. You actually take them in the hierarchy that the designer is trying to project. As an example, the biggest picture, the word with the biggest font, the brightest color, those are the things that catch your attention first. And then you now begin to go back in the order of the hierarchy, and your brain begins to try and make sense of it, and then the complete image is formed. And that is why, if the next time you go out, look at the billboard, and just as you drive past in the flash, you will notice that there may be like 5 or 7 different elements in that image. But no matter how quick it is that you are driving past, a good visual image, the biggest word is the word that, even if that is all that you see, your brain and your mind can fill in the gaps and have an idea of what they're saying. So this mix of elements, composition, and communication, the first rule there is be deliberate about your hierarchy. Do not take it for granted. Whatever is most prominent, whatever you do not want the viewer to miss, whatever you think is the singular most communicative part of that image, is what you must give the required hierarchy to, so that whether the consumer or the audience is able to slow down to watch it or has to fly past in a hurry, they can get that biggest message and then fill in the gaps themselves. That would be number one, that has to do with hierarchy. Number two is the alignment. In alignment, you are talking about groupings, you are talking about sequencing, you are talking about, is it all straight? Are they all scattered? Are you trying to show a correlation or relationship between two different types of elements in your design? Whatever you do, be very deliberate about your alignment. You can use this variable to point the viewer or the audience towards what you want them to see based on where it is positioned. As an example, in the English world, you read from the left to the right. So, I'm from top to bottom. If there is something very, very important that you don't want your audience to miss, you naturally want to arrange it close to the top and then closer to the left. If you go to the Arabic world where they read from right to left, the same rule applies, where the most prominent things will be placed on the right, because that is how the mind has been trained to consume the content. So, when we speak about alignment, we are saying the same thing as we spoke about hierarchy. The way you align the elements of your visual must be such that the most important things, the most compelling message you are trying to pass across is at the point in your visual that the mind can recognize the significance, can consume it, and then your message is passed across. Make that number two. Now, Number 3 has to do with contrast. When you see this image there, that item that is in bold, can you imagine if it is another word or another phrase that you have highlighted? How do you think it affects the viewer? When you use contrast, light, shade, underline, italics, whatever you use, that is presupposing that there is something you are trying to draw attention to. So, if you then underline something that is not relevant, or you make something that is not relevant, you make it bold, you slow the viewer down, you slow the audience down, because instead of consuming what you are trying to say and moving on, you turn it into an exam. They're trying to figure out, why is this in bold? Why is this in red? Why is this underlined? Meanwhile, it may just be an accidental click, but the audience does not know. And that is why if you have similar objects in a particular design, unless you are pointing attention to one of those objects, keep them consistent by shape, by color, by highlight, by formatting. Because if you have 4 boxes and you make one, you have one is with fill, the other 3 are without fill, you make the viewer slow down and trying to figure out, why is this one filled while the others are not filled? Because you have access to all these nice tools and all these nice options in your design box, does not mean you have to use everything. When it comes to contrast, the name of the game is consistency. That is why when you see a compelling PowerPoint presentation, there is a consistent feel to it. The title has a particular feel, the content has a particular feel, there is a feel to the images, the animation. Those consistencies, they help in taking away the distraction and the noise and the clutter for the consumer, so that they can see clearly what you are trying to communicate. And remember that communication is about the effective exchange of information. So when it comes to contrast, be consistent so you don't cause any distraction. That is number 3. And number 4 is the use of color. I've already alluded to it. As much as possible, keep the colors very simple. Do not just say because you have this wide array of colors, you're busy painting everything, because after a while you will overwhelm the viewer and the audience, and instead of being able to see clearly what you are trying to say, you have turned it into a puzzle or a maze. And if they are not interested in solving a puzzle by reading or consuming your visual communication, they abandon it and they move. So this is a very big area, and I know that if you are really interested, you can either go online and dig up for more information, or reach out to me and let me know how I can help you. But in this time and age of technology, where you can mix audio and visual components of a communication, visual communication is becoming more and more and more indispensable. And that is not surprising if you realize that only 7% of your communication is words. The other 93 are non-verbal, including this visual. So your ability to mix your communication with the right level of visual can make a world of difference in how effectively you can communicate in the world of work. And of course, all these things we've shared will cover things like graphs and charts and illustrations that you have to do even when you are preparing a financial report. I'm sorry I've had to go so long with it today. It is because of the breadth of information I'm trying to pass across in this very short video. I hope you forgive me for that. So we rest it at this point this week, and next week we try to find one final point to put everything together, so that when you take the set of videos together, you find what you need to become a more powerful and effective communicator in the workplace. Thanks for being here again this week. T-Mark is still my name, and all I'm trying to do is what? Make a little difference. See you next week, and bye.